My little boy was standing at the edge of the kitchen doorway, gripping the sleeve of the pajamas, so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. He looked at me the way children look at adults when they are carrying a secret far too heavy for their small shoulders. "Dad," he whispered, "Mom told me to lie to you." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. I lowered the newspaper and smiled gently. "Okay, buddy, what did Mom tell you to lie about?" He looked toward the hallway before answering. "She said if you ask where she goes after work, I should tell you she goes straight home." My smile disappeared. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "And she doesn't?" I asked. My son shook his head. "No, Dad. She meets the man from the blue car." I wanted to ask 100 questions, but I noticed a fear in his eyes. Whatever was happening, my son had already been dragged into something he didn't understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. My wife, Claire, lay beside me, breathing peacefully as if nothing in our marriage had changed. I stared at the ceiling and replayed my son's words over and over. The man from the blue car. I remembered seeing that car before. Several weeks earlier, I had noticed a dark blue sedan parked near Claire's office. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. People came and went from her workplace every day. But suddenly, insignificant moments began connecting themselves in my mind. Claire had started working late more often. She kept her phone face down at dinner. She had changed her password twice. When I asked if everything was okay, she always smiled and said she was simply tired. I had trusted her because that was what marriage was supposed to be built on. Now, lying beside her, I wondered whether trust had made me blind. The next morning, I didn't confront Claire. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to know whether my son's words were the innocent observations of a child or evidence of something much bigger. At breakfast, Claire kissed our son's forehead and reminded him about school. "Remember what we talked about?" she asked casually. My son froze with a spoon halfway to his mouth. Claire immediately looked at me. "What did you talk about?" she asked. Her voice was perfectly calm, but I noticed something behind her eyes. Fear. My son looked down at his cereal. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. "Nothing important," I said. Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. After she left for work, I sat beside my son and promised him he wasn't in trouble. He finally whispered, "Mom said you would get angry if you knew." Then he added something that made my stomach tighten. She said the man is helping her. Helping her with what? I spent the entire morning thinking about that question. I didn't want to become the suspicious husband who imagined betrayal everywhere. But I also couldn't ignore what my son had told me. So I decided to follow Claire after work. Not to attack her, not to embarrass her, but simply to find the truth. At 5:30, she left the office. Instead of driving home, she headed toward the older part of town. I kept enough distance to avoid being noticed. 10 minutes later, she pulled into a small coffee shop parking lot. The blue sedan was already there. A man stepped out. He looked to be in his early 40s, wearing a gray jacket. Claire got out of her car and hugged him. My heart sank. It wasn't a casual greeting. It was a kind of hug people shared when they had missed each other. I watched them walk inside together, and for the first time in 12 years, I wondered if I had ever truly known my wife. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, staring through the coffee shop window. Claire and the man sat across from each other. They talked quietly. Once, the man reached across the table and held her hand. Claire didn't pull away. That single gesture hurt more than any accusation could have. My first instinct was to storm inside. I imagined throwing open the door, demanding answers, making everyone see what was happening. But then I remembered my son's frightened face. I remembered his tiny voice saying, "Mom told me to lie." My anger suddenly felt less important than understanding the situation. I took a photograph of the blue car's license plate and drove home. That evening, Claire returned at nearly 8. She kissed me and said, "Traffic was terrible." I looked into her eyes and asked, "Did you have a good evening?" She smiled. "Just another boring day." I nodded. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Boring." Over the next few days, I watched without letting Claire know. She met the man twice more. Each time they were careful. Each time she told me she was working late. My suspicion became unbearable, but something still didn't make sense. If Claire was having an affair, why involve our son? Why would she risk making him carry such a secret? And why had my son said the man was helping her? There had to be something I wasn't seeing. One afternoon, I asked my son about the blue car again. His eyes filled with tears. "Dad, please don't make Mom mad at me." I hugged him. "I won't. You didn't do anything wrong." He buried his face against my chest. Then he whispered, "Mom said she loves you, but she can't tell you yet." That sentence confused me more than anything. If she loved me, why was she hiding another man? That evening, I checked our joint bank account. There were several withdrawals I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Almost $8,000 had disappeared over the previous 2 months. My heart raced. I immediately thought about the other man. Was Claire giving him our money? Was she planning to leave us? I checked our savings account and discovered another transfer. This time, the destination was an unfamiliar business account. I confronted Claire indirectly. "Have you needed extra money lately?" I asked while we were cleaning the kitchen. Her hand stopped moving. "Why?" she asked. I was just wondering. She stared at me for several seconds. "No, everything's fine." She walked away. That was the moment I knew she was hiding something serious. But I still didn't know whether the secret was an affair, a financial disaster, or something even worse. The following afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. "If you want the truth about Claire, come to the old community center at 6. Come alone." I stared at the screen for several seconds. My first thought was that it was a trap. My second was that someone knew I had been watching. Still, I went. The building was almost empty. The man from the blue car was waiting inside. When he saw me, he raised both hands. "I know what this looks like," he said, "but you're wrong about one thing." I clenched my fists. "Then tell me why you're meeting my wife." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand. "Because Claire asked me to help her save your family." My anger faltered. Save my family from what? He hesitated before answering. "From the debt your brother left behind." I stood there in disbelief. My younger brother had died 18 months earlier after his business collapsed. I knew he had debts, but I believed his estate had handled everything. The man introduced himself as Daniel Mercer, a financial investigator who had been helping Claire uncover fraudulent loans that had been taken out using our family's information. Suddenly, the missing money made sense. Claire hadn't been giving it to him. She had been paying legal and investigative fees while trying to protect us from creditors. Why didn't she tell me? I asked. Daniel's expression became serious. "Because she was afraid you would blame yourself. Some of the documents were signed using your identity. She thought you might panic, sell the house, or make a reckless decision." I felt the anger draining from me, replaced by shame. But then I remembered my son. Why did she tell him to lie? Daniel looked away. "Because someone had been watching your house." When I got home, I found Claire sitting at the kitchen table with tears running down her face. She didn't ask where I'd been. She already knew. "You met Daniel," she whispered. I nodded. "Why didn't you tell me?" Claire wiped her eyes. "Because every time I tried, something else happened. Someone sent threatening letters. Someone called the house and stayed silent. Then one night, I saw a stranger sitting across from our house." She took a shaky breath. "I thought if you knew everything, you'd confront whoever was behind it." I sat across from her, and our son, her face collapsed. "I made a terrible mistake. I told him to tell you I was working late. I thought I was protecting him." I reached for her hand. "You put him in the middle." She nodded through her tears. "I know." For the first time, neither of us defended ourselves. We simply sat there and faced the damage together. Then our son appeared in the doorway. He had heard enough. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" he asked. The question broke something inside me. I walked over and knelt in front of him. "No," I said. "We're going to work through this." Claire came beside me. "And you never have to lie for either of us again," she told him. He looked between us. "Even if someone tells me to?" I shook my head. "Especially then." That night, we contacted the authorities and gave them every document Daniel had collected. We changed our locks, secured our accounts, and began dealing with the fraudulent debts legally. The investigation eventually revealed that someone connected to my late brother's former business had been using our identities to cover losses. Claire's secret meetings with Daniel had been about protecting us, not betraying us. But her secrecy had nearly destroyed the trust she was trying to save. Months later, our lives were finally becoming normal again. The legal case was moving forward. Our finances were under control, and Claire and I had started marriage counseling. We weren't magically healed. Trust doesn't return because someone explains why they lied. It returns through hundreds of small, honest choices. One evening, my son climbed onto the couch between us while we watched television. He looked at me and smiled. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy." "Mom doesn't make me keep secrets anymore." I looked at Claire. She smiled sadly. "Never again." I pulled them both closer. The truth had almost torn our family apart, but it had also taught us something we had forgotten. Protecting a family doesn't mean hiding painful truths from each other. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth before fear turns the people you love into strangers. And that was the promise we made that night, to never make our little boy carry an adult secret again.